Welcome to City Pulse. I'm here today with Mayor Ron Arnold. Ron, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Pam.
Also here with Josh Ginder, Superintendent of the Wastewater Company,
Hello.
and Glenn Murry, the Utilities Supervisor. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you.
Today we're talking about the CSO issues and the IDEM agreed order and the going forward with that plan. Over the last year, I've noticed that there's been hearing about an order from the IDEM concerning Elwood's wastewater plant. Could you briefly give us some history on that?
We'll try to be brief. This is a very complex issue, and it's one that we've tried to get as much information out as we can. These two gentlemen, being our utility managers, have spent a lot of time in making sure we get this right. It's very important to all of our residents in our city, Pam, and to the future growth of our city. When I became mayor, there was something waiting on me called an agreed order with the state of Indiana. And that was basically a legal document saying these are the things that we would do to improve our utility operation, mainly wastewater treatment plant operation, and avoid the state coming in, taking over our utility or fining us heavily for not operating it within legal parameters. So if I could rewind just a bit, in 2011, before I was mayor, I attended a couple public meetings I know these gentlemen were in. And at the time we had an engineering firm called Commonwealth that the city had hired to put together what's called a long-term control plan. It basically is just a long-term plan of how we operate our wastewater plant and our collection system. And the collection system is simply when you see water going down a street drain, that's collecting wastewater. And when we say CSOs, that's a combined sewer. And nearly 95%, is that the right number, gentlemen? 95% of our sewers are combined, which means they take the sanitary sewers from your homes and businesses and industry, and they take the stormwater that comes off the streets and off your lawn and off your parking lots, and it combines it into one pipe, runs it to Josh at the treatment plant. They treat it, clean it, return the water back into the creeks or the environment, and it goes back through the system again. Our plant has not been upgraded since the 70s. It's lived a long, fruitful life. And those public meetings that were going on in 2011 with Commonwealth and the administration of that time was talking about a 4-phase long-term control plan that had been approved by the state of Indiana and IDEM, which is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. That's IDEM. In government, you use a lot of acronyms, and so I like to explain what those are, because if you're not sitting here every day, you have no idea what a CSO or IDEM or any of these things are. But what they were telling us in this long-term control plan was in phase 1, and phase 1 is now, we're under a timeline to get this done by 2015. And that was, it was going to cost $10 million to complete phase 1. Phase 1 basically was going to be a large tank collecting stormwater so that we don't have what the state of Indiana calls overflows, which means you have water running out of your holding tanks before they're treated. And so anytime you have those are environmental incidents. They're very serious. You do not return water back to streams, creeks, ponds before it's treated. And so we have incidences many times through our calendar year where maybe that water is not treated the way it should be before that overflow happens. The overflow happens when there's a lot of rain. The system's maximized, goes over its maximum limits, and we have these incidences. So that's brought the state of Indiana in to say you have to do something, City of Elwood. You have no choice. You have to be able to treat your stormwater. So Commonwealth is telling us in 2011 that's a $10 million fix in phase 1. Completed out through phase 4, they were talking $35 million to fix this problem. Now, I wasn't a math major, Pam. I was a political science and business major. But it's easy math. We have approximately 3,700 ratepayers, Glenn. So you take, let's just round up, let's say 3,700 ratepayers. Divide that into $35 million. It doesn't work, babe. And so I became very concerned, began to have conversations with these gentlemen about what is this, what's going on, why are we at this point, what can we do to change course. And so we started those conversations even before I was the mayor about, do we have alternatives? Are we stuck with this $35 million, what I considered an impossible fix for a city and a utility our size? And so when I became mayor, what we did was we sat down and basically we hit the reset button and we said, let's go back to the beginning here. Let's look at the long-term control plan and let's just see, maybe we can build a better mousetrap and do it for less than $35 million. And so that's a very short, concise way of saying we've worked very hard the last 15 months, spent many hundreds of hours interviewing every engineering firm that ever thought about doing any kind of wastewater treatment plant upgrade or collection system upgrade, and we brought them to the table and we asked them to give us their best ideas of how to solve this financial mountain that, quite frankly, Pam, our ratepayers cannot afford. And so the good news, let me jump to that. There's some good news, if you will. What we found is we have two alternatives that the Board of Works is reviewing currently. And one plan would totally redesign the way we treat water, be a whole different approach to what we currently do at the wastewater plant. That fix is $7 million, or we have an offer to redo what we have, which would match our agreed order with the state of Indiana and more closely align ourselves with what they're asking us to do at this time. That fix is approximately $4 million. So I said there was good news in that, didn't I? Originally, we were told just 2 years ago that phase 1 would cost $10 million. In the worst case scenario, we just saved $3 million. $3 million divided by 3,700 ratepayers is real money. And so what I want everyone to understand is we have done all that could possibly be done to make sure that whatever we end up having to do this year to correct this problem at our treatment plant, to be able to continue the growth cycle that we're currently on. We've done all we can do to keep it as inexpensive as possible. The city of Elwood has not had a rate increase in water or sewer for 8 years, Pam. It was 2005. The last time we had a rate increase. Looking back, hindsight is eerily 20/20 vision. Probably should never have done that. Probably should have had a small rate increase every couple of years. Built healthy reserves, been able to be ready, more prepared for the project today. Rate increases are terribly unpopular. People don't like them. I don't like them. I pay a water sewer bill. These gentlemen pay one, you pay one, Pam. We don't like our rates going up. But if we're honest about it, I've told many folks, the biggest giant in business is Walmart. And to think that Walmart could survive if they didn't raise any of their prices for 8 years, Pam, would be ludicrous. Anyone would say, no, of course not. I mean, in 8 years you have to. That's basically what our utilities done. We've put off for 8 years the inevitable. And if you ever played kick the can, you're pretty young. For us older guys, if you ever played kick the can, know that we've kicked this can as far as it goes. There's not one more kick in the game. So we're there. We have 2 solid proposals to complete phase 1. We have to act. You will be seeing and hearing about public meetings that will involve your city council, and they will be talking about what the rates need to increase to in order to build this plant and to get this project done. And it will be uncomfortable. Folks don't like to raise rates. None of us do. We know that there are many folks on fixed incomes that are unemployed, underemployed, and you're hurting. I work in this building where the utility bills are paid. These gentlemen work for the utilities, and I talk to folks who are struggling to pay their utility bill. It's a serious situation. But what I want to assure everyone who's listening, we've done everything we possibly can to keep it as low as possible. Now, I'll tell you, there are some folks who mailed a postcard out a couple weeks ago, and I have some critics who are saying the mayor is spending more than the utilities are bringing in. And I'd like to explain that for just a moment, if I could, Pam, to say that, again, if you don't raise rates for 8 years, at some point you're going to start spending more than you're bringing in. If you work the same job for 8 years without a raise, and everything goes up, the price of gas goes up, your electric bill goes up, your groceries go up, all of a sudden you can be doing the same thing in your own household. You can be living on credit in your savings account because you're not bringing enough money in. So none of us can go for extended periods of time and not increase our income to keep up with the cost of living. Neither can our city utility. And so we've got to have a balance where our rates are as low and as competitive as possible, but while still maintaining enough that we can have a healthy savings, a reserve, so that we can repair pumps, we can repair major components. I say this is it's not an option to do nothing. When you have pumps that are pumping raw sewage, if those pumps don't work, you have an environmental incident that the state of Indiana will fine the city of Elwood for. And so last June we had IDEM come into the plant. They did an inspection. We've been talking about this for 8 years. And so the state of Indiana has grown a little weary of the conversation. And so they came in June to say, okay, we've talked about this long enough. Now, what are you actually doing? And so what they found were multiple violations in the wastewater plant. 12 or more violations. And so what they said to us in June is, we're going to fine you. Each fine levied per violation could be $27,500 per violation. We had 12 or more paying. So do the math. You're into the $200,000-300,000 range of fines. What we got serious about doing was we got serious about fixing what we could, doing what we could until we were ready to build a new plant. And so pumps that weren't pumping, we fixed. Equipment that wasn't working, we repaired. Areas where we did not have staff to operate equipment and to actually operate our wastewater plant and our operation, our sewer system and the cleaning of it and the maintaining of it, we staffed it. And so we went fast and furious for the last half of 2012. In January, IDEM came back because we have to send a 60-day report. Every 2 months we send a report that we're outlining the progress that we're making on that agreed order that I signed and that long-term control plan that the city adopted. And so they came back in January to say, we're getting 60-day reports showing lots of activity, lots of things changing. Is this for real? Is the city actually doing something? And so they came in, and I'm happy to report that in a very short 6-month period of time, we went from multiple, 12 or more violations to a report telling us in January, no violations observed. Now what I tell folks are there violations at our treatment plant? Are there things that aren't working that we need to fix? Yes, there are. But what you saw was the human aspect of the inspectors who came in to a very different plant, a very different operation 6 months later. We had to spend money, Pam. We spent $288,000 in capital dollars replacing pumps and equipment and getting that plant as operational as a 1977 plant can be. And so the Band-Aids are applied, the quick fixes, the short-term solutions are there. We're ready to build that new plan, whichever it may be, whether it's the $4 million option or the $7 million option. We're ready. As a city, as a utility, we're ready for the council to and the Board of Works to select that. We have had our utility financial analyst doing what's called a rate study. And what he does is he looks back over the operation of the utility, what you're going to need to operate, to pay your overhead, to continue operating, to have a healthy savings account so that you can continue to repair and fix your plant and treat the water in legal parameters. And so he's coming out with a rate study that will tell us, whichever option is chosen, how much that increases your monthly water and sewer bill. I will tell you today we're looking at a range from $13 to $20 a month increase in order to get this done. And that will give us enough funds to not spend more than we take in and to then pay the debt service on the new plant that's put into place later this year. So, long answer. It's a very complicated operation and process. But again, if you don't take away anything from this video but this point, please know that these gentlemen have done all that they can to operate this utility at the lowest possible cost and to make the rate increase the least impactful as possible. One of the things, Pam, that our financial analyst did was he compared our city to surrounding cities and to cities like Elwood, the size, the makeup of the community. And I proudly report to you that if we're not at the very bottom, we're maybe second to the bottom of lowest utility operating costs and lowest utility rates to their customers. So if you look at surrounding communities, many communities have been hard hit, very heavily impacted by some of these IDEM state and federal regulations that have been imposed on city utilities and municipal utilities. There are some surrounding communities that have $100 minimum charges on water and sewer. We don't have that. Our rate currently is an average of $28 and change. We're looking at going somewhere between $41 and $45, $46 and change. So even with that rate increase, we're still very competitive if anyone looks at our rates compared to other communities. So I've done all the talking, and these gentlemen are much smarter than I am. Everything I just told you I learned from them and learned by sitting at the table for the last 15 months. So, gentlemen, what did I miss, or what point do you think we should make?
Well, I think you've covered it pretty good. Just the improvements out there at the plant alone, getting us out of violation, establishing a communication chain with IDEM now has been vital.
Now, if, say, it's been, quite a few years since things have been replaced or fixed in there, which causes fines.
Right.
Now, if you would have originally just taken the money to fix it, you wouldn't have been charged the fines, correct?
Well, that's what we did. We came very close, Pam, to paying $300,000 or more in fines. Mm-hmm. That does not get you out of fixing the problem.
You still have to come up with the money to fix the problem.
Still
so therefore, you're spending more money
yes.
on fixing plus the fines. Now,
yes.
if it takes a while to fix those problems and you incur fines, which they've said that there are no more problems, or there are some, but not major ones to get fines with. So there in turn, you're trying to save the city money by fixing that and not having to pay out those extra fines.
Absolutely.
If you were not to have done that and you had still received fines, would that cost have been sent to the consumers?
Yes, excellent point. Know this. In my bone marrow, I'm a conservative person. I'm not a big spender. I don't just like to, I don't spend my own money that way, and I don't want to spend your money that way. But what I do want to make sure we do is we comply with the law. We operate our utility as we should, and as a community that is growing and turning the corner and bringing new folks in, ready for that growth, ready to do that. And so your point is exactly right. You have a decision to make, Pam, whether you go after it and you fix it and you do your best to show the state of Indiana and the federal government that you're doing all that you can to help yourself. And you hope that by making the investment up front and doing things as best you can, that then they back it up a little bit, give you a little breathing room, give you some time. And that's what we've bought ourselves, a little bit of time. This has to be done by 2015, so we have a finite period of time. But we were looking last summer at paying more than $300,000 in fines and still investing $288,000 in capital. One pump alone can cost $16,000, and we've bought a few of those. And so not only do you have to have that pump working, you're required by state and federal laws to have a backup pump. Because again, if you're treating raw sewage and the pump fails, you have to have a pump ready to go. There's not time to say, well, let's look in the catalog and see who's got one on sale, and maybe we'll get one from Louisville, or where's the closest pump. We've got to put one in play immediately, and then that buys you some time to either get that pump that failed repaired or replaced. And so if you've got a postcard that said that I spent 200 and some thousand more than the utility took in last year, that number could have been much bigger. That number would have been more than double that amount. The good news is we invested it in staff and plant. So we have the investment here in the city. We didn't send a check to the state of Indiana or to the federal government. We kept it here in Elwood. We invested in the plant, we invested in personnel, and it's already paying dividends.
Well, can you tell me what all does it take to run the water and sewage plant?
Oh, it takes how the plant actually operates. It definitely takes a lot of money. But staff, we follow the state of Indiana, and Elwood have an agreement, which is our permit, and that's kind of the guidelines that are required. So we have to adequately staff the plant. Number one is adequately staff the plant. We can be fined if we don't adequately staff the plant. Every piece of equipment has to be in working operation and condition. If it's out, they can violate you for having a piece of equipment that's not working. So having a staff that can maintain the equipment and keep that running is vital to keeping the wastewater treatment plant in compliance with IDEM. It takes a lot of hard work. It's water that's coming in that's just the worst of the worst, and it goes out to Big Duck Creek, better quality than your swimming pool. It's a very it's an amazing process. People don't like to look at it like that, but it's amazing. So it takes money, it takes hard work, and it takes teamwork.
Now again, if something goes wrong and you guys get fined, the city has to pay out more money. There, in turn, the consumers pay more for their bills.
Exactly.
Is that how it kind of works?
Yeah. And IDEM, they don't use the excuse of, well, we have no money, so we can't fix it. That's not an option. That's not a valid excuse with IDEM. you have to fix it. I mean, it's for the safety and the health of everybody that all that equipment is up and working, and you're right, they will, if you're fine, it's just like any other business, it's going to be passed down to the consumer.
Let me explain
Somebody
too.
has to pay for that.
You brought up a couple of points. Pam, let me explain. The utilities operate out of a different fund than the city itself. The city itself operates on your property tax dollars, basically. And that's called a general fund. And that pays the police and the fire and the street department and the parks, and it operates your city. The utilities operate on what the ratepayers pay, their customers. They don't collect property tax. They're more a business model. They're a utility. And so what you pay as a ratepayer is what pays their salaries, their overhead, maintains your water lines, your sewers, your treatment plant, all that's paid out of that. Your property tax is never part of the utility. The utility is a separate entity from the city and its general fund. But what these gentlemen have they have permits from the state of Indiana to be the wastewater treatment superintendent, to be the utility superintendent. Mr. Murry has a permit, and they're required to file reports with the state on a regular basis where they are accountable for the processes and the equipment and the staffing and how the plant operates, how the water's treated, how it gets to your spigot. He's getting it to your spigot, and he's taking it from your commode and your shower. And out of your yard. So, but they carry permits. They have to be certified operators in order to hold these positions. And so, we can't require professional people like these two gentlemen to file erroneous reports with the state of Indiana. They put folks in jail for that. This is an environmental issue. This isn't we just didn't get the patches in the street done. This is, if he doesn't do his job, we are discharging sewage into creeks that affect the whole state, everybody. And so he just mentioned the water that they're sending into Big Duck Creek is swimming pool quality water when it comes out of that plant. That's a major process to take raw sewage and turn it into swimming pool quality water. That's no small feat. Mr. Murry has all of what we call our collection system under his purview, and that's every sewer in the city where it's collecting the water. He has to maintain that. And so many residents may have seen what we call our vac truck. It's a huge truck, very noisy. It's got a huge hose on it. It takes 4 guys to operate that vac truck. And what that's doing is that's going and cleaning and doing a preventive maintenance. We'd like it to be preventive, but we're not. Sometimes we're not so preventive. Sometimes we're playing defense. But it's going out and it's cleaning those sewer lines. And so any resident that's had backup in their basement, they've had backup in their commodes or their drains, there's almost always a problem somewhere in the collection system. There's been a collapse of the sewer line. So a lot of our sewer lines are still brick, and so those brick are old. Some of the sewer system, Glenn, is 100 years old. Some of it's collapsing. And so they're having to go in and find those breaks, those areas where they're collapsing. They have to rebuild them. They have to make sure that that's unobstructed, or the sewers don't flow. You'll see rainwater back up into the streets because it can't get to Josh at the treatment plant. And so these gentlemen are given permits by the state of Indiana, and I would never ever ask anyone to file any kind of erroneous reports. These gentlemen wouldn't do it, but there are cities who put their operators in jeopardy of jail and fines personally because they don't want to make the investments that are required. So know that these two gentlemen take their jobs very seriously because they hold the permits. I don't hold the permits that they use. They individually are named in those permits. as wastewater and as water. And so it's a very serious operation to them.
Well, Jim, and I appreciate you guys talking with us. Is there anything else that you'd like the public to know about as far as, you know, the wastewater treatment plants or the utility department, anything?
I would like to just put out if anybody wanted to come down and take a tour, see the operation. We can certainly schedule that. Some of the improvements down there have been great, and so I'd encourage everybody that wants a tour to come down and see the operation of it.
I going to set up a date to come down and
Okay,
take
great,
a tour.
great.
So.
Okay. Well, yes. If you can't get out, if you can't get to the plant, if you can't come talk to these gentlemen, stay tuned to elwoodindiana.org. I know Al's going to be down at the wastewater treatment plant. Hopefully take a ride with Mr. Murray around to the different operations of the water side of the utility and the collection system. And so we'll do our best to bring you all the information that we can. But please, if you want to take a tour, if you want to talk to these gentlemen and better understand what's coming, why are my rates having to go up, I don't understand why this works this way or that way, or why did the mayor spend more money than we take in, ask these gentlemen. They're the operators. Call my office at 552-5076 and set up a time to meet with Josh Ginder at the wastewater treatment plant or Glenn Murray on the water side or the overall utility operations. One or both of these gentlemen are happy to meet with you, show you any of our facilities, explain how we treat water, how we handle the utility. Please take them up on that offer.
Gentlemen, I thank you very much for speaking with me today. Ron, you too as well.
Pam, thank you. And again, thank you, elwoodindiana.org. And for those of you who are tuning in, thank you for coming and getting the correct information, the information directly from us about what we're doing to grow this great city. Thank you.